Hey My Chemical Romance fans, I'm here to demo two signature basses by Mikey Way. First is the new Fender Mikey Way Jazz bass, and the second is the original Squier Mikey Way Mustang bass. Alright, let's hear how these two sound. So before going into the review of the new Mikey Way Fender Jazz bass, I wanted to go over his Squier Mustang first. So this Squier Mustang released originally in 2012, and they stopped production of this in early 2016. This bass was originally listing for $300 USD. When it discontinued, it was listing for $350 because that's how much I paid for it. I bought it right when it discontinued in 2016. So Mikey Way got a signature Fender Mustang bass, and this Squier model is based off that. So Mikey Way was playing a lot of P and J basses over the years, but during the Danger Days album, I think he wanted something different, something a little more glam, you know, kind of like Smashing Pumpkins, really sparkly. So he wanted to do like a Mustang supersonic model, and that's kind of how this Mustang came about. He chose to do a humbucker because he liked the P-bass sound, so he wanted it to still kind of have that heavier sound instead of a traditional Mustang pickup like that one up there. So the reason he chose Silver Sparkle is because he had a jazz bass originally that he really liked. That was a Guitar Center exclusive jazz bass that had a Silver Sparkle finish. So enough about the history. Going into the specs of the bass, again, it's a mini humbucker, volume, tone. It is a string through body over here. It's got the silver finish with a Mustang racing stripe, black headstock, not a matching headstock, but a black headstock, and then it has the Mikey Way signature on the back. So the neck is a C-shaped neck, but because it's a short scale bass, it's fairly comfortable to play, and it's also a fairly lightweight instrument. This is the brand new Fender Mikey Way Jazz bass. This is a limited edition model. There is only, I believe, 1,000 copies made. I can't confirm that, but I haven't seen serial numbers higher than 900. Mine, for reference, is number 301. You can use the serial number to determine which model yours is. So My Chemical Romance broke up in 2013, and they got back together in 2019. They got back together, Mikey Way, he did drop the Mustang bass, and he wanted to use jazz basses again, so Fender made him two custom jazz basses. One was a model like this, and then another one was the same model, but in all black. Even though I already have the Squier Mustang bass, I was waiting for Fender just to make another signature Mikey Way bass. The reason is because the Squier Mustangs, even though they only went for $300 back in the day, because My Chemical Romance had a huge resurgence in popularity, Mustang basses actually go between $700 and $1,200 right now, just because there's such a big band. So when I saw Mikey Way was playing a new jazz bass, I was really banking in 2019 for Fender to release another issue, because there was just obviously a demand for Mikey Way's signature bass. For those of you that follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you probably saw my videos saying that Fender needs to release this bass, and 4 years later, they finally released this jazz bass. This bass is retailing for $1,500, which is honestly a lot of money, but because I know how in demand the Mustang is, I really couldn't pass up on this, and this is going to be my forever jazz bass. The bass itself is very similar aesthetically to the Squier Mustang. Silver Sparkle finish, but this looks like a much more enhanced Silver Sparkle. The Squier one looks a little cheaper. No racing stripe on this one, only on the Mustang. Volume, tone knobs, not a string through body. It has, they say, vintage hardware, so vintage style bridge and vintage style tuners, which basically means a cheap tuner is just a marketing ploy, let's be honest. Like the Squier Mustang, it is a C-shaped neck, but because this is a jazz bass, it's actually kind of beefy. It's not as fast as I would like the neck to be, but it's still comfortable. The headstock on this is black, just like the Mustang bass, but it actually has a bullet truss rod, if you see there. It is unique. I've seen those on guitars, but I haven't seen them on a bass myself yet. So that's pretty much a high-level overview of the basses, the history, and the specs of it. So let's compare some sound samples side by side. earlier, I forgot to state that both basses are using Elixir bass strings. The ones on this bass are fairly newer, but I can tell you I don't really play this bass that much, so the strings on this one shouldn't be that worn out. I did run both of these through an Ampeg SGT-DI pedal as well. So let's do a high-level pros and cons for each bass. For the Squier Mustang, it is significantly cheaper, even though the resale value has skyrocketed. It is still a cheaper bass. The bass itself is fairly lightweight, and it's a smaller package, so if you have small hands, the Mustang is a lot easier to navigate, considering both basses have a C-shaped neck. And the last thing I'm gonna say is that this bass is really unique. You don't see a lot of Mustangs just with this mini humbucker or with a silver sparkle finish. Definitely a piece of art. Let's go into the pros of the Mikey Way Jazz bass. The silver sparkle finish is really the first thing that caught my eye. It looks so good in person, especially compared to this Squier Mustang. This is a true silver finish. This one does look a lot cheaper. The next thing is the tone on this jazz bass. This is the perfect tone that I like. They truly are vintage 70s style, their voice pickups. Also, overall, the build quality of this bass, it just doesn't feel cheap. This feels like a cheap bass. This is a solid bass, even though I would argue it's a little overpriced. I know it's gonna last me in the long run. And then also the bullet truss rod, that does make this bass a little unique. I must say, I have not seen a bullet truss rod on many basses, and I don't know if it's a tribute to like their first album, Bullets or whatever. It's cool to see that. All right, so the cons for each bass. Starting with the Mustang, the first one is the silver sparkle finish. If you compare the two silver sparkle finishes, this one it looks significantly cheaper than the new Mikey Way Mustang. I will say it's supposed to be voiced to sound like a P bass, but it sounds really muddy, and if you're trying to sound like My Chemical Romance or Mikey Way, it doesn't really do the job. I've owned this bass for a long time, and you don't see me covering My Chemical Romance with this bass that often because I don't think it sounds very good. The next thing is the neck. Even though it's a short scale, I don't know why it's a C-shaped neck. I would want something a little thinner, but I guess Mikey Way just likes to have a larger neck, which is really a preference thing, but it doesn't make it a very fast neck. All right, so for the cons of the Mikey Way Jazz bass, the first is this bass has a really thick neck. It's a C-shaped neck, so similar to a P bass profile, but it's just thick, and it's not a standard modern slim jazz profile neck. If I want to play fast, I can't play fast on this thing. It sounds great, but if I'm trying to do anything really quick, I gotta pull out a different bass. The next is the prices for the features. I don't think this bass is worth $1,500. I mean, for me personally, it's worth $1,500 as a My Chemical Romance fan, and I can tell you this is going to keep its value. There's not anything terribly unique about this bass besides the finish and the bullet truss rod that makes it feel like it's worth $1,500. You know, there's no like cool racing stripe on it or high mass bridge or some unique like pickup combination. It is a little overpriced, even though it will retain its value. All right, so before reaching the end of this review, let's just hear how versatile these basses are. So I'm going to just kind of go through all the tones of each bass. So overall, how do I feel about both basses? As a My Chemical Romance fan, I love both of them. They both look fantastic, definitely eye candy. You can see I have all three My Chemical Romance signatures, including Frank Iero's limited edition green Phantomatic. I got My Chemical Romance Black Parade Funko. I got a Black Parade shirt. So as a My Chem fan, I mean, these basses are fantastic, and I'm just so happy to own that piece of history. Looking a little more objectively as a bassist, looking at the Squier Mustang, for $300, it's a really cool bass to have. The silver sparkle doesn't look great in person, and the pickup, it sounds muddy, but it's still a really cool bass. And it works well in certain situations. That like some punk rock it'll work, probably not My Chemical Romance, depending on punk rock you're playing it could work, and then indie rock stuff, so like with Tame Impala, I found it to be really cool bass with flat wounds. However, these basses go between $700 and $1,200. I was really hoping the jazz bass would kind of deflate the Squier Mustang prices, so it would be more accessible, but because the Mikey Way jazz bass is priced at $1,500, I don't see the prices of these Mustangs going down. Now going to the Mikey Way jazz bass, I've been wanting this bass for 4 years, so obviously I'm gonna say I love it. It's hopefully my forever jazz bass. This is the 6th jazz bass I own, and I don't want to buy any more jazz basses after this. The silver sparkle is gorgeous. My plan is to actually swap out the black pick guard and the hardware to gold, so it'll be a silver and gold sparkle bass. But for now, I'm just enjoying it as a Mikey Way bass. I mean, the voicing on these pickups look great, and it sounds exactly how I want a Fender jazz bass to sound. However, again, objectively speaking, as a bassist, this is a lot of money for just a jazz bass. If I were to just get a jazz bass and not a My Chemical Romance fan, I'd probably get a Squier V5, and that Squier V5 is $500. It's a third of the price of this, and they have it in a gold finish, and it sounds almost as good as that, and it's a lot lighter bass, and the neck is more comfortable. The bass on this neck is really thick. I really wish it had a modern jazz profile. I mean, I'm still gonna play this thing and love it, but I can't recommend this to anyone that isn't a My Chemical Romance fan. So yes, you can complain Fender overpriced this bass a little bit, but there's only 1,000 of these made. I guarantee you it will sell out soon enough, and it's going to retain its value. So if you are a My Chemical Romance fan and you want this bass, I would consider getting it sooner than later. And again, right now I'd consider all Fender artist signature models. They're going between about $1,300 and $1,600. So this really isn't that far off of the pricing compared to other artist models. It just doesn't have anything that really stands out besides the finish. I wish it had like high mass bridge or, you know, like a drop D tuner, but it just doesn't have that. I love both basses. I initially was gonna sell the Mustang once I got the jazz bass, but I've decided to keep both just because the Mustang, it still looks really good. Even though the sparkle finish doesn't look as good as the jazz bass, I'm just gonna keep it around as art. Since I don't own artwork, my basses are my artwork in my home. Thanks for watching the review, and then let me know what you think of both basses and which one's your favorite.